Everyone please be seated. Let's start our next session. मुश्किलों से भाग जाना आसान होता है. मुश्किलों से भाग जाना आसान होता है. हर पहलू जिंदगी का इम्तिहान होता है. डरने वालों को मिलता नहीं कभी कुछ जिंदगी में. डरने वाले को मिलता नहीं कभी कुछ जिंदगी में. लड़ने वालों के कदमों में जहान होता है. I welcome you all back. I hope you all are very well refreshed. Now let's start with our last session for today. I request CA Piyush Mehta sir to come forward and escort our speaker, CA Rajiv Newar, onto the dais and welcome him with a bouquet of flowers. Malini, please. Big round of applause. Thank you, sir. Let's hear a quick introduction about our today's speaker, Rajiv Newar.
Rajiv Newar, a renowned name in the corporate world. Over the past 3 decades, Mr. Rajiv Newar, who is now the Group CFO with R.K. Swamy Hansa Group, has built a broad-based career with leading Indian business houses such as Tata's, Birla's and K. Raheja's Corporation, in senior leadership roles in finance and strategy across hospitality, retail, FMCG, healthcare, luxury fashion and cement. He is a qualified CA and CS and holds many certifications from reputed B schools like IIM, ISB, Cornell, Stanford and Michigan. Rajiv had received gold certification in balanced scorecard and currently enrolled with Marshall Goldsmith, who are globally known for stakeholder-centered CXO level executive coaching. Rajiv has successfully led business and balance sheet turnaround strategies, stakeholders and investor relationship, driven organizational, cultural changes, digital transformation initiatives and people development plans. In the recent past, he has successfully led his company through an IPO with an equity subscription by globally reputed funds and investors. Rajiv has an active speaker, moderator, panelist at various CXO events and industry forums. He has been interviewed by Morgan Stanley, Axis Capital, Bloomberg Quint and various news channels. He is a man with vision, man with solutions. He is guide, mentor and a perfect inspiration for people who know him. Thank you.
Indeed, that was a great introduction. Sir, we are honored to have you with us here today. I request you to please come forward and share your words with us on the topic fundraising for MSME through IPO. Sir, please.
If you don't mind, can I start? I used to be punished in school.
So I've got a habit of standing, you know. Okay, you all remember, see, यहाँ पे सब chartered accountants हैं. Now, if you go back in time, and if you remember the time that you spent studying for becoming a chartered accountant, it was tough, wasn't it? For how many was it easy? Can you raise your hands? For how many was it tough? Can you raise your hands? So there are few people for it was neither tough, neither easy. Let me ask this question once again. For how many people studying was tough to become a CA? Okay, quite a few. But today, after you become a chartered accountant, when you go back in time, do you still feel the pain that you felt when you were studying? Most of us don't feel the pain. We only remember that we are now chartered accountants. For me, this journey was in 1992, little over 30 years. But, in fact, coincidentally, my son is also a chartered accountant. Now, IPO journey is something very similar. But before that, a caveat. I came into Daman today for the first time. Thanks for the invite. And I am supposed to be a panelist for tomorrow's session. So this session is actually in extempo, unplanned, unrehearsed. Okay? So we will make it a little more interactive. And what I intend to do today is share with you my experience of an IPO journey. See, if you read the books, you will actually realize what are the various regulations you need to follow to comply with an IPO process. I'm not discussing that. I'm going to share with you what is not there in the books, because that is what is going to be interesting. And this is a APBT story. By the way, when I was with the Tata Group, I was with them for almost 2 decades, and I was the global head of finance for them, for Taj Group. We had done a lot of capital raise, and thousands of crores. But that journey, when I compare with an IPO journey, is very different. It's very different. If I may say so in another words, it's like giving birth to a child and adopting a child. That is the kind of difference I see. Now, talking about a child, it usually takes about 9 months or so from conceiving to delivery. IPO journey also takes about 9 months from conceiving to delivery. But for many companies, this journey can actually become way more than 9 months. It can go into 15 months, it can go into 2 years. But trust me, when it goes to 15 months or 2 years, the momentum is lost. And it's very difficult to keep a momentum going for 18 to 24 months. So what do we do? What do we do different to make the IPO process shorter? Imagine just before your CA finals, if we were to tell you that you have to study for 16 hours a day, continuously for 12 months, it would be a huge pressure. Likewise, it's very difficult to keep a momentum for more than 6 to 8 months before an IPO. I will tell you a secret of how you can do an IPO journey in 6 months. And what I'm sharing is something we actually did. And what we are doing now, what I am into right now, is another IPO journey. So broadly, if you break up the IPO journey, it's basically, I would say, into 4 stages. The first stage is from the time you conceptualize an IPO till the time you start working on the DRHP. The second stage is from the time you start working on the DRHP till the time you file with the SEBI. The third stage is after you file with SEBI, all the road shows you do till you get the SEBI approval. And the fourth stage is after you have got the SEBI approval, your DRHP becomes an RHP till the issue. I repeat, I'm not going to talk about the regulatory part. I'm going to share with you some of the things that we must be mindful of when we are going through an IPO journey. Okay? The first and the foremost is change behavior. Obviously, who's going for an IPO? A company which is private. A private company, under company law and various corporate laws, is used to work in a certain way. Whilst there are many companies which are very mindful and very compliant, not every private company, I believe, needs to be as compliant as a listed organization, simply because the rules are very relaxed for a private company. Second, in a private company, the team that is working in finance team and the kind of finance team that you need for a listed organization is very different. And I'm going to talk about it in a bit. Why I'm saying this is because I'm given to understand that there are 2 kinds of people sitting here. One who are in practice and one who are in corporate. For those who are in practice, I was told that many of you want to understand this journey so that in case you are partnering your client, then how do you partner your client? You need to know first, and then you can partner your client. How do you know? Through your own experience or through other people's experience. So I'm sure you know it. I'm just going to share my experience for you. For those who are in industry, you could be in the listed organization today, but tomorrow, who knows? You could be leading an IPO. And if you are leading an IPO, what are the few things you need to know? Regulations can change. What I'm going to share with you for the next 15 minutes is not going to change. Okay. The first and the most difficult when you go in for an IPO is change behavior, which is changing the organizational behavior. A behavior, okay, I am also an executive coach. And I can tell you something, to change a behavior, it takes anywhere between 6 to 9 months. Changing the organizational behavior in 3 months or 2 months or 1 month is very difficult. But there is a way to do it. You can only change the organizational behavior in a short time if you have the leadership buy-in. If the leadership buy-in is not there, and if they simply say finance to the finance team and to the CA firm, listen, just prepare, file, and go through it. You will not go through an IPO, you can take it from me. Till your organizational behavior changes, you will not do an IPO. Why? When you are preparing your financials, like audits, etc., it's okay for the finance team to prepare, submit, close everything. IPO is impossible. I'm using the word impossible without the participation of the business stakeholders. Now let me explain to you why. Today, if I'm going for a bank loan, what do I give the bank? I give to the bank my next 5 years projections. Correct? And based on that, they have a discussion. They assess the management. They look at the KPIs. And then they decide how much loan to give you. In an IPO, you can't give forward-looking statements. So imagine you are expecting the investor to invest in your company where you can't give a forward-looking statement. So how will your investor decide whether you are investable? Is that correct? You can invest only when I know. So if I have to invest, say, 500 crores, 1,000 crores in your company, I must know whether you will make that into an X amount. But you're not giving me future projections. Not because you're not giving me, legally you're not allowed to give me. So what happens? Therefore, the DRHP becomes very important. I'm going backwards, and I'll explain to you what is the relevance here. So therefore, the DRHP becomes extremely important. When you go and meet the investors, you cannot speak anything other than what is there in the DRHP. So your DRHP is not just data. You need to think through what you're going to speak with the investors, and you have to make sure that it is there in the DRHP. So therefore, the DRHP becomes very important and becomes your box, outside which you cannot go technically. Now, when you look at the DRHP, it has got 4 sections. And I'm going to talk about that one section which is very, very important. One is obviously the finance section, where you have all the accounts. One is the secretarial section, where right from the beginning till the date, all your compliances are there. Third section is the legal section, where all your litigations, etc., are all put in. But the fourth and the most important section, which will make or break your DRHP or your IPO, is going to be your business section. And this business section is a very tough one. I'm first giving you different pieces and then we'll connect. The business piece is very tough one. Why? Today, if I have to say that I am a chartered accountant, the lawyers will ask me, okay, so what happens? If I have to go for an IPO, We have to appoint merchant bankers. Merchant bankers will appoint lawyers, and lawyers will have to give them certificates. And these lawyers are very, very tough because they can't go wrong. So they look at every full stop and every comma. And I'll just give you a few examples. These lawyers will check each and every word that you write in the DRHP. And if you're not able to prove that word, they will simply delete it from your DRHP. Now, assuming I say that I am Rajiv Devar, I am a chartered accountant, fine, give me a certificate. If I tell them that I have done so-and-so balance sheet turnaround initiative, what you just mentioned, they will say, how do I know? Please give me evidence. So I have to go to my previous company, get that evidence, and give it to them. Only then it can be included. If I say my business is I'm one of the best in the country, they say, how do you know you are the best in the country? Please give me evidence. If I say my market share has grown by 20% or 25% a year on year, they will say, give me proof. Everything, they ask for proof. And you cannot go without this proof. So if you have to go for an IPO, you need to remember one thing. The journey is tough, but if you plan it, it is possible. Take any company's IPO, similar company's IPO document, which is the DRHP. Look at what kind of data they have put in. Get your internal team, including your business team, to start drafting as if it was their own company. For every data that you are putting in there, you need to make sure that there is evidence. If you don't have the evidence, you can write it, the lawyers are going to delete it. We had spent almost 3 months' time drafting the business section, and we spent 3 months' time on the rest of it. That is how the business section is. And the business section cannot be done just by the finance team. It can only be done with the participation of the business teams. So if the entire organization is not with you in your IPO process, you cannot lead your IPO process. Now, the second thing is, so one part which I've just told you is that the importance of the business section in your DRHP. That takes enormous amount of time. The number of times it is written. By the way, who writes that? Do you write that? No, you don't write that. The lawyer writes that. Interesting. You don't write it. The lawyer holds the pen to that document. So if you give him an essay that this is my profile, this is my company, they will ignore it. They will write their own essay and it will be interactive. So the lawyer drafts your business section to a large extent. That is one. So everything has to be fact-based. Second thing which I want to highlight is, talking about your finance section in your DRHP. The year before you are going for the DRHP is very important. In the past, you may have done whatever, but the financials, the full year's financials that is going in the year before you're going for IPO is extremely, extremely important. So make sure that whoever you're partnering, whoever you're guiding, make sure that all compliances in that in the financial documents are all up to date. Nothing should come after you've gone listed. So हो सकता है कि 3 साल पहले का कुछ था या 2 साल पहले का था, you have not taken a provision, there was a related party issue, whatever it be. There was a FEMA issue, there was any issue, GST issue, tax issue. Make sure this financial is absolutely clean from a finance perspective. Third part, which is again very, very important, related party transactions. Related party transactions takes maximum number of time when you're closing an IPO. Because, especially in a private group, you have 6 to 7 companies. sometimes 15, 20 companies, and transactions happen between themselves. But it's okay not to reconcile those related party transactions. In an IPO, it has to be reconciled. Make sure it is reconciled in the finance section. If it is not, we have a problem. Last, secretarial. Information on the secretarial part of the DRHP is not just the current. Some data goes back to your incorporation. So right from the time you have incorporated the company till the time you are filing the DRHP, every data has to be included. Now, very often you don't have minutes updated. Very often you don't have, you may not have filed certain forms with the ROC. Make sure that all data, all filings are up to date, for which you may have to look at, because a private company may not be subjected to a secretarial due diligence. So make sure that the entire secretarial due diligence is done, because anything which is not there will get reported in your DRHP. Last 2 points for the day. When you go to an investor, you get exactly 1 hour, start to finish. We met investors across the globe, whether it is London, whether it's New York, whether it's Boston, whether it's Singapore, whether it's Hong Kong, whether it's Bombay, whether it's Chennai, anywhere. There is a very standard process when you meet the funds for your IPO. They will only give you 1 hour. The meeting will start exactly on time and end exactly on time. Not a minute less, not a minute more. You will be surprised with the discipline that these fund houses follow. And I'm talking about the best fund houses in the world. In that 1 hour, you have to decide what is your storyline. And that 1 hour will decide whether he wants to invest in you or doesn't want to invest in you. Now, when you are speaking to the investors in that 1 hour, you may think that 1 hour I can talk about my past, I can give him story, or I can tell him this, I can tell him that. Nothing doing. In that 1 hour, if you don't convince him your IPO, he will not invest in your IPO. Now, a fund house meets probably 5 such people like you every day. So what will make him invest in you? Your storyline has to be very different. For that storyline, again, we can't go with the DRHP. We go with the information memorandum, which is not more than 20 pages. And the only conversation that happens in that 1 hour, trust me, is not about your numbers. There is not more than 5 minutes that the fund manager spends on your numbers. He says, numbers, you give it to me, I will review it later. I don't want to spend your time. I want to understand from you only one thing. What is your strategy going forward? I am going to invest in your strategy. I'm not investing in your past numbers. You could have done 100 crores, 500 crores, 1,000 crores in the past. That does not assure me that you will do the same number going forward. What is your strategy? And therefore, unlike any other conversation, this 1 hour is going to make or break your IPO. And that preparation has to be so sharp, so crisp, because if you fail CA, you can give in another attempt. But if you fail an IPO, it's very unlikely that the funds will give you another attempt. And therefore that 1 hour is extremely, extremely critical. So if I was to summarize the few things which I just mentioned, the first thing is that the business section of a DRHP is extremely, extremely important. It takes a very long time. Very often, many companies start attending to the business section towards the end. They address the finance section, they start working on the secretarial piece, they start working on the the legal piece, because that is within the control of the finance team. But the business section, they start working absolutely towards the end, which does not help. Because in a business section, if you're putting a number or if you're putting a KPI, and if it is not there in your financials, you can't put it. So everything has to be strategized and linked. You can't say that I will do everything else in the business section, I will do towards the end. You can't do that. So your business section has to be done hand on hand with your legal, secretarial, and finance section. That is the first message. If you are able to do that, trust me, you will save at least 3 months. Second point, your preparation for your fund managers. Don't just go and tell them a story. They're not interested. Your preparation has to be so sharp, because this is a one opportunity. You're not going to get the second opportunity. As I said, if someone was appearing for CA and if he or she fails, he or she can appear again. Third time, fourth time, fifth time, not in IPO. So your preparation for that 1 hour has to be so sharp, and therefore that for that 1 hour, the number of hours that is prepared or spent preparing, rehearsing, again and again and again and again. So when we started with the original draft, that what we will put before the investor, and the final draft that went to the investor was completely different. So you can't say, ki, chalo, I will prepare today and go to the investor tomorrow. Does not happen. Cannot happen. So preparation of the information memorandum and preparation for that 1 hour is very important. Second. Third, the financials that you are there for the year before you are going for an IPO. Pass all entries, whatever you need to do. Don't wait. Pass everything. Let there be no surprises. And for this, sometimes you have to get your promoters, sometimes you have to get your board aligned. But do it. Don't let surprises come out later. Fourth, you could have a situation that there could be certain secretarial records which are incomplete. Because the quality of the team that you have in a private company sometimes is not of the same level, sometimes, I'm saying, as required in a listed company. So, do a thorough due diligence and make sure that if any filing have to be done with compounding or whatever, it can be done. Last, your team. This is my last point. They will be really burning a midnight oil. It goes on for at least, as I said, even if you do all of this, it will be 6 months. But 6 intense months. If you really have to get in, there has to be a leader who has to keep motivating the team. Motivation of the team is extremely important, because there will be times where the team will get demotivated. Because they will be surrounded by merchant bankers, lawyers, auditors, and everybody together. Somebody will say, "Mujhe ye do," somebody will say, "Mujhe ye do," somebody will say, "Mujhe ye do." Your preparedness, your planning. So you need to build your team. You can't simply work with the same team that was there. You have to start building your team before you go for an IPO. So when we went for an IPO, we also built the team, and again I'm going for an IPO, again we have built the team. Building the team with the right mindset is very important. And the team should have a GST. Now what is GST? The team should have generalists, the team should have specialists, and the team should have people who understand technology. Generalists are the people who will have a slightly larger, big picture approach. GST, right? So G is generalist, S is specialist. You will need people who are specialists, like tax experts, very good in your law, you are very good in your secretarial practices, or you could have chart firms who you outsource, but who work with you very closely, who can take management responsibility for the company and make sure that everything is compliant. And T, which is technology. If a company is heavily manual, it's very difficult, very difficult. Because you may still survive, struggle, and go through an IPO process. But post your IPO, once you get listed, when you have to file your results within 45 days, if your processes are manual, it's very difficult. So you need to make sure that your team has GST, generalists, specialists, and technocrats. Thank you.
Would like to request you to elaborate a little bit on options of whether corporate should go for equity, private equity or IPO, point number one. And at what stage of corporate life cycle one should plan for equity raising, even if there is options of debt raising?
What was the second part?
Debt versus equity. First is
Okay.
equity versus private equity.
Okay. So many companies which are going in for an IPO, go in for an IPO because of multiple reasons. Because a PE had invested in that company and the PE has to be given an exit. That's one. Second, so then it becomes an OFS, which is offer for sale. Many companies go in for an IPO because they want funds to expand. They have grown with their internal funds by taking a lot of debt, and now the debt has grown to such an extent that they can't grow further because debt servicing becomes difficult. So those are the two things. In my view, a PE should not come in. Okay, let's understand. A PE will always ask you, no offense, for a certain, I need to phrase my statements correctly. Their expectations are high. The P's expectations are high. You will have to be on your toes all the time, which is nothing wrong. But PEs would not be interested if you can't give them a return less than 20%. So first of all, it's not about when can I get a PE in my company. The question is, the PE interested in coming to your company? So can you give a return of giving 20% return year on year? Growth. If yes, the PE is going to come in. If you are able to give a healthy return, you can negotiate with the PE to take a lower equity stake. But if your returns are going to come at a later date, the PE is going to take a higher stake, at which point in time you will lose a lot of value in the company. So to answer your question, when should a PE come in? I feel to the extent you can manage through debt and create a viable business proposition, go with debt. It shows that you have the confidence, but don't go to such a debt that you can't survive. So my view would be start off with debt, because 100% is you. Then when you reach the business to a certain extent, where you feel that debt cannot help you to grow further, but there is a very significant opportunity for you to grow further, then you go in for a PE. And then another 3 years, you go in for a PE exit, which is an IPO. Did I answer your question? So first debt, then PE. So, but it should be very clear. Step one, grow the business with the PE. You cannot have the PE and continue just like here. You have to grow here. And when the IPO comes, the expectation is you will grow further.
Any other questions? No? Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for accepting our request on the very last moment. Indeed, it was an impromptu, but it didn't look like It looked like a fully prepared and rehearsed presentation. A big round of applause. Thank you, sir. Now I request
No.
CA Piyush Mehta sir to come forward and deliver a formal vote of thanks to CA Rajiv Nevas.
Hello. Good evening, friends. Indeed, last session of the first day. It's always difficult to digest session after session. But I hope when matter comes about the fundraising, we the commercial persons, we the chartered accountants are always interested, whether it is last session or late last session, right? And to justify the role, we must appreciate that Rajiv Newarji has accepted our request at the last moment. We come to know just 2 hours before that Mahavirji Lunawat, who is supposed to be our regular speaker on MSME IPOs, is not feeling well, having some fevers, and he has to cancel his visit. There was no alternate that we can replace with other his team member from Bombay. It takes more than 4 hours to travel. At the last moment, Rajivji has accepted our request, and he has practically said his experience of 2 decades and more in going through the IPO exercise. That is what we can vouch from his delivery of experiences. I will not say that he has given us legal jargons or something, but what are the pain problem areas of going through the IPO exercise? He has excellently explained it, whether it is a GST team or whether it is 4 compartments of IPO. He has understood it perfectly, and to that extent only he has explained it. Now it is always said that best time to raise the fund is actually when you don't require the funds. Many times our clients and entrepreneurs, we face the question that if I don't require funds, why I should go for the funds? And you are the person who are guiding me that debt is the cheapest and equity is the costliest, and why I should dive into equity. So these are the practical areas we face day in and day out, and in the given particular situation, unlike accounting and taxation, there is no common format or single advice which fits to the all clients. So it has to be a tailor-made solution for each and every client, and we as a financial advisor, we have to develop that skill of analyzing the client's stage of growth in a corporate journey, and we have to advise accordingly. Once again, I would like to thank Rajivji for his last moment acceptance of our request and doing the justice to his topic and sharing his experience about IPO going. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you to all the audience who are present at this last session. From VAPI branch, we sincerely thank you. Again tomorrow it's going to be a fantastic event with all the new topics related to cryptos and all these things. We will love to listen all these things. Thank you very much once again. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Piyush sir. Thank you, Rajiv sir.